One moment laughter echoed from the front yard. The next, silence swallowed everything. It was the kind of quiet, sunlit afternoon that small towns are made of. The kind where neighbors wave from their porches, lawn sprinklers click in, steady rhythm, and the world feels safe, predictable, almost timeless. 6-year-old Lily Henderson was playing in her front yard, her blonde hair tangled in the warm breeze as she clutched her favorite doll. Her giggles floated across Maple Street, as natural and comforting as the song of a mockingbird. Her mother, Sarah, leaned against the doorway with a dish towel in hand, smiling as she called out, "5 more minutes, honey. Then it's time for dinner." And then, like a candle snuffed out, everything changed. Sarah turned her head for the briefest moment, just long enough to set down the towel. When she looked back, the yard was empty. The doll lay on its side in the grass, but Lily was gone. "Lily?" Sarah's voice trembled. At first, it was just a call, a playful reminder to come back. But when silence answered her, panic seeped in. She rushed down the steps, scanning the yard, the sidewalk, the bushes along the fence. "Lily!" Her voice grew louder, sharper, breaking the stillness of the neighborhood. Curtains shifted, doors opened. Neighbors stepped out, their faces etched with curiosity that quickly turned to alarm. Within minutes, Maple Street was filled with worried voices and searching eyes. Sarah clutched the doll to her chest, her knuckles white, her breath shallow. "She was just here," she cried. "Just right here." Word of a missing child spreads, fast in a small American town. The church bells hadn't even finished their evening chime when half the neighborhood was already combing through backyards and alleys, calling her name. Retired veterans with flashlights, mothers pushing strollers, teenagers on bikes all joined the search. It was the kind of moment where the whole town moved as one, bonded by fear and desperation. By the time Officer Caleb Turner arrived, the scene was already chaotic. His patrol car rolled to a stop, red and blue lights flickering against the fading sky. He stepped out with a steady calm that came from years on the force, but even he felt the weight in the air. At his side leapt Bones, his German shepherd partner, muscles taut and ears alert. Sarah ran straight to him, her tear-streaked face pale with terror. She grabbed his sleeve like a lifeline. "Please, Officer Turner, please find my little girl." Caleb met her eyes and gave a slow, firm nod. He had seen grief before, but the look in Sarah's eyes, raw, broken, hit him harder than most. He crouched briefly, scratching Bones behind the ear. "You hear that, boy? We've got work to do." Bones barked once, sharp and eager, his tail flicking like a battle flag. The search began with methodical precision. Caleb and Bones moved along the sidewalk, past the hedges, around the parked cars. Bones lowered his nose, inhaling deeply, weaving, back and forth as he tracked invisible trails. Caleb scanned the ground, searching for footprints, broken branches, anything out of place. But the lawn was undisturbed, the fence unbroken. No signs of struggle, no scuff marks. It was as if Lily had simply vanished into thin air. Neighbors gathered in uneasy clusters. One older man swore he thought he heard a faint cry near the park at dusk. Another woman shook her head. She'd been watering her flowers all afternoon and hadn't seen a soul. The contradictions only deepened the confusion. Sarah stood near the porch, her hands trembling as she clutched the doll tighter, rocking on her heels like she was holding herself together by sheer will. The porch light flickered on as the sun dipped low, casting long, anxious shadows across the yard. Caleb glanced at her, then back at Bones, who had suddenly stopped at the edge of the property. The dog's ears perked, his body rigid, his nose twitching toward the direction of the old park 2 streets down. A low growl rumbled from his chest. Caleb tightened his grip on the leash. "What do you smell, partner?" Bones barked, sharp and insistent, pulling toward the park. The small-town charm of Maple Street now felt like a stage for something darker. Porch lights flickered on, illuminating faces lined with fear. Parents clutched their children a little, tighter. Every shadow seemed too deep, every sound too sharp. Caleb knew the first hours were critical. Either they found Lily tonight, or the trail could go cold forever. He turned to Sarah, his voice steady but urgent. "We'll follow Bones. He may be the only one who can lead us where she went." Sarah's lip quivered as she nodded. "Please," she whispered. With that, Caleb and Bones stepped into the deepening night, guided only by instinct, hope, and the faint pull of a scent that promised answers. But in the pit of Caleb's stomach, a single question gnawed at him. How could a child disappear so quickly in broad daylight with so many eyes nearby? The answer lay somewhere in the shadows, and Bones was already leading the way. Maple Street, usually the kind of place where neighbors traded pies and borrowed sugar, now buzzed with unease. Porch lights glowed like anxious eyes in the dark. The smell of cut grass mixed with the acrid scent of fear. It didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like the center of a nightmare. Officer Caleb Turner tightened his grip on Bones's leash as the German Shepherd tugged toward the old park at the end of the block. Bones's body was tense, his nose twitching, tail stiff with focus. Caleb trusted that stance. He'd seen it too many times before to question it. Behind them, Sarah clung to her daughter's doll, whispering prayers under her breath. Her voice wavered, the sound of a mother trying not to fall apart in front of a crowd. Every now and then she'd call out, "Lily," but the name dissolved into the night with no reply. Neighbors trailed close by, carrying flashlights and lanterns. Some kids, no older than high schoolers, rode ahead on their bikes, scanning sidewalks and hedges. Old Mr. Wallace, the retired mailman, shuffled along with his cane, muttering, "Never in all my years. Never thought I'd see something like this here." Caleb glanced back, his voice firm. "Everyone spread out, but don't wander too far. Keep your lights on, and if you find anything, shout." Bones barked once, sharp, impatient. He wanted to move faster. Caleb crouched, running his hand over the dog's back. "Easy, boy. We'll get there." The park had always been a familiar landmark. Swings squeaking in the breeze, benches painted, green but chipped with age, an old oak tree standing like a watchman. Tonight, though, the park felt different. Shadows pooled around the edges, swallowing the corners where street lamps no longer worked. Bones lowered his head, pulling toward the oak tree. His nails scraped against the concrete path as he lunged, forward nostrils flaring. Caleb followed, his pulse quickening. The crowd hushed when Bones began to dig near the tree's roots. Dirt flew, paws working furiously until the glint of something small caught the beam of a flashlight. Caleb knelt, brushing away the soil with careful hands. A tiny bracelet lay in the dirt, pink plastic beads strung together, with a silver charm, etched with a single word: Lily. A gasp broke through the silence. Sarah dropped to her knees, clutching the bracelet like a lifeline. "It's hers," she whispered, tears streaking down her face. "Her grandma gave it to her last birthday." Caleb's throat tightened. This was the first real piece of evidence, proof that Lily had been here not long ago. But why buried? And why here, at the base of a tree no child would choose to hide under? The crowd erupted with theories. One woman cried, "She must have dropped it when someone grabbed her." Another man muttered, "Or maybe she left it as a sign." Caleb raised his hand, silencing them. "Speculation won't help. What matters is this is her bracelet. Bones is on the right track." Bones sat beside the dug-up earth, panting heavily, his eyes fixed on Caleb as if to say, "Don't stop now." The search widened. Flashlights swept through bushes, over slides and swings. The sound of people calling Lily echoed into the night, but the park gave no answer. One neighbor, a stocky man named Henry, swore he saw a truck parked near the park a few days ago. Big maintenance rig, old dented sides, didn't recognize it, looked out of place. Another added, "Yeah, I saw that too. Wasn't from our county vehicles. Some guy sitting in it just watching." The murmurs spread quickly, suspicion taking root. All eyes seemed to drift toward the same name: Arthur Finch. Finch was the reclusive maintenance worker who lived on the far edge of town. Folks rarely saw him except when he was driving his battered truck. He kept to himself, didn't talk much, and never stayed long when he did. Rumors painted him as odd, even dangerous. Caleb listened but kept his face steady. He knew better than to lean on gossip alone. "We'll check every lead," he assured them. But inside, he couldn't ignore how Bones had reacted earlier that week, growling low when they'd passed Finch's workshop on a routine patrol. Sarah stood apart from the crowd, rocking the bracelet in her palm as though holding her daughter's hand through it. Her lips moved in quiet prayer, her whole body trembling. Bones padded over, resting his head gently against her knee. For the first time all night, her sobs softened. She stroked the dog's fur, whispering, "Thank you, boy. Thank you." It was a fleeting comfort in the storm. By midnight, the town square looked like a command post. Police cars lined the street, radios crackled, and volunteers gathered around coffee urns set up on folding tables. Caleb briefed his team, showing them the bracelet sealed in an evidence bag. "This is our first hard link," he said, "but it also tells us something else." She was moved. She didn't just wander off. The weight of those words sank in. Mothers held their children tighter. Fathers exchanged grim looks. It wasn't just a lost child. It was an abduction. Caleb rubbed his forehead, exhaustion pressing in, but determination burned stronger. He looked down at Bones, who sat alert, ears pricked, eyes scanning the crowd. The dog didn't seem tired. If anything, he was restless, as though he knew more trails were waiting to be found. As the night deepened, whispers of fear turned into something heavier. Distrust. Some neighbors eyed one another suspiciously. What if it was someone local? What if the person's right here among us? The thought curdled the air. Small towns thrived on trust, but trust was fragile, and tonight, it cracked. Caleb knew he had to tread carefully. Every minute mattered, but panic could splinter. The town. He leaned on the hood of his patrol car, staring into the darkness beyond the streetlights. Somewhere out there, Lily was alive. He had to believe it. Beside him, Bones gave a low growl, ears shifting toward the direction of Finch's side of town. Caleb straightened. "Easy, boy." But his own heart pounded in agreement. The search would continue with the dawn. For now, all they had was a bracelet, a whisper of suspicion, and a German shepherd who refused to stop pointing them deeper into the shadows. The town had quieted some by dawn, but it wasn't the peaceful kind of quiet. It was heavy, like the hush before a storm. Search parties were still scattered through the back roads and fields, and volunteers gathered at the church basement over coffee and donuts, reviewing maps with tired eyes. For the first time in memory, Maple Street wasn't talking about gardens or football games. Every whisper was about Lily. Officer Caleb Turner sat on the hood of his patrol car, watching the evidence bag glint in the early morning light. Inside was the tiny pink bracelet, the silver charm etched with Lily's name. It was such a simple, innocent thing. But to him, it felt like the loudest clue they had. Bones lay stretched out beside him, head resting on his paws. But Caleb knew better than to assume he was resting. The dog's ears flicked at every sound. The rumble of a pickup on the far road, the distant slam of a door, even the rustle of leaves in the park. Bones was still working, even in stillness. Sarah approached slowly, her face pale, her hands trembling from lack of sleep. She had refused to go home. Her husband tried to convince her to rest, but she wouldn't leave. "If she's out here," Sarah said softly, "then I need to be too." Caleb nodded, keeping his voice steady. "We found something last night. This bracelet, it proves she was at the park." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She pressed her fingers against the glass of the evidence bag as though she could feel her daughter's warmth through it. "She never took it off," she whispered. "Not even for bath time." Caleb let her linger with it for a moment before pulling it back. "That tells me one thing. Someone wanted us to find it." Her head jerked up. "What do you mean?" "Dropped. Jewelry doesn't bury itself under tree roots," Caleb explained. "It wasn't just lost, it was left." Later that morning, Caleb and Bones returned to the park. The swing still swayed with the breeze, creaking like old bones, Bones sniffed around the oak tree again, nose pressed to the dirt, circling, tail flicking with agitation. He barked once, short and low, then pressed forward into the bushes beyond. Caleb followed, careful, scanning the ground. A candy wrapper. A crushed soda can. Nothing unusual, until Bones stopped, pawing at the ground near a patch of disturbed soil. Caleb crouched. A faint mark cut across the dirt, too wide for an animal, too shallow for a shovel. It looked like a tire track. Caleb's jaw tightened. A truck. His mind went back to the night before. The neighbors' whispers. The old, dented, maintenance rig someone swore they saw near the park. Arthur Finch. Finch's name had circled the town like wildfire. He was a loner, mid-50s, with thinning gray hair and a weathered face. People remembered him fixing fences and mowing roadside grass years ago, but he'd drifted into obscurity since then. He lived on the edge of town in a cluttered workshop that looked more abandoned than occupied. Caleb knew better than to chase gossip, but the evidence pushed him closer. The bracelet near the park. The tire track. Bones growling when they passed. Finch's shop the week before. He called his partner, Deputy Mills, and they drove out toward Finch's property. The road grew narrower, lined with tall grass and sagging barns. Bones sat alert in the back seat, nose pressed against the window. The workshop came into view, an old corrugated metal building, paint peeling, windows coated with grime. Out front sat a rusted pickup with dented sides, the kind of truck neighbors had described. Caleb parked, scanning the property. No movement, no lights, just the sound of cicadas buzzing in the weeds. He clipped the leash to Bones's harness and whispered, "Stay sharp." Finch answered the door after several knocks. His eyes were pale, his expression guarded. He wore grease-stained jeans and a flannel shirt with frayed cuffs. "Morning," Caleb said evenly. "Mind if we ask you a few questions?" Finch frowned. "About the girl, right? Everybody's been talking." Caleb nodded. "You been around the park lately?" "Park?" Finch scratched his chin. "Not in years. Ain't nothing there for me." But Bones growled low, pulling against the leash, nose twitching toward Finch's boots. "Easy, boy," Caleb murmured, tugging him back. Finch's lips twitched, the faintest hint of annoyance. "What's his problem?" "He's trained to pick up scents," Caleb replied. "Sometimes dogs notice what people don't." Finch shrugged. "Dog can sniff all he wants. I ain't done nothing wrong." Caleb studied him, weighing every word, every flicker in his eyes. Nothing solid, yet no warrant, no cause. Just a bracelet, a tire mark, and a dog that wouldn't stop staring. "We'll be in touch," Caleb said finally, backing away. As they walked back to the cruiser, Bones barked once, sharp and defiant, as though the conversation wasn't over. By the time Caleb returned to town, tension had thickened. Folks gathered at the diner, sipping endless cups of coffee, trading theories. Some swore Finch was guilty. Others argued it had to be someone from outside, a stranger passing through. Sarah sat in the corner booth, her hands clasped tight in prayer. When she looked up at Caleb, her voice broke. "Please tell me you found something." Caleb shook his head. "Not yet. But Bones is pointing us in the right direction." Her eyes shifted to the dog, her voice trembling. "Then God bless him." Bones wagged his tail, pressing his nose against her palm. For the first time since the nightmare began, a small smile flickered across her face. That night, as Caleb filed his reports, he couldn't shake the image of Finch's pale eyes and the restless growl in Bones's throat. The bracelet wasn't just a clue. It was a message, and he had a sinking feeling the message wasn't finished yet. The diner on Main Street was fuller than Caleb had ever seen it on a weekday morning. The usual smell of bacon and coffee still hung in the air, but the chatter was heavier now, weighted with fear. Folks who normally talked about crop prices or last night's ball game now leaned across tables whispering about one thing: Lily Henderson. Everywhere Caleb went, eyes followed him, some filled with hope, others with quiet accusation, as if expecting him to deliver answers he didn't yet have. Bones walked close at His side, his nails clicking against the linoleum, his presence a steady reassurance to some and an uneasy reminder to others that danger still lurked. Sarah sat in the corner booth, her hands folded around a mug of untouched coffee. The bracelet, Lily's bracelet, rested on the table in front of her, sealed in its evidence bag. She kept staring at it, her lips moving silently, as if she could summon her daughter back with prayer alone. Caleb slid into the booth across from her. "We're not giving up," he said softly. She lifted her eyes, rimmed red from sleepless nights. "They're saying it was Finch." Caleb didn't answer right away. He knew the town was already running with that story, but repeating it only gave it more power. "We're checking every possibility," he said instead. "I can't let gossip decide this case." But Bones, resting under the table, gave a low growl that made Sarah glance down. She reached out, brushing her fingers over the dog's head. "He knows," she whispered. "Dogs always know." Outside the diner, two older men leaned against the hood of a truck, their voices carrying just enough for Caleb to hear. "Finch always gave me the creeps. Yeah. Lives out there alone like that. You see the way he looks at people?" Caleb clenched his jaw. This was the problem. When fear took root, suspicion became easy. And Finch, with his strange habits and isolated life, made for the perfect target. Still, the evidence gnawed at Caleb. Bones's reaction, the tire marks, the truck, it wasn't nothing, but it also wasn't enough. That afternoon, Caleb drove back out toward Finch's property, Bones alert in the back seat. The workshop looked the same as before. Rusting, sagging, silent. Finch was outside this time, dragging old lumber across the yard. He glanced up as the patrol car rolled to a stop, his expression unreadable. "You again," Finch muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. Caleb stepped out slowly. "Just checking in." Finch dropped the lumber with a thud. "You think I took that girl, don't you?" Caleb kept his voice calm. "I'm asking questions. That's my job." Bones strained against the leash, nose twitching, eyes locked. On Finch. His growl was low, steady, like a warning that wouldn't quit. Finch scowled. "Keep that animal back." "Bones reacts to scents," Caleb said evenly. "Sometimes things people don't even notice." Finch's eyes narrowed. "I got nothing to hide." But his words didn't match the flicker Caleb caught in his expression. A flash of something defensive, maybe even guilty. Caleb filed it away. Without proof, it was just a feeling. That night, back in town, Caleb attended the community meeting at the church hall. Rows of folding chairs were packed with neighbors, their faces drawn tight with worry. The pastor stood at the front, trying to offer comfort, but it was hard to hear over the low buzz of rumors. A woman stood up suddenly, her voice shaking. "Why haven't you arrested Finch yet? Everybody knows it's him." The room erupted, in agreement. Heads nodded, voices rose. Someone shouted, "He's done strange things before." Another added, "That truck of his was at the park, I saw it myself." Caleb raised his hands. "Please, listen. We need evidence, not speculation. If we move too fast without proof, we risk losing the chance to bring Lily home safely." But the words did little to calm them. Fear had already hardened into anger. Sarah sat near the front, silent, clutching her Bible. Her eyes, though, were fixed on Caleb. She wanted answers too, but more than answers, she wanted her daughter back, alive. Bones barked once, loud enough to cut through the noise. The room fell silent for a moment, all eyes on the K9. Caleb felt the weight of it. Sometimes it seemed the town trusted Bones more than him. Later, as the meeting broke apart, Caleb walked Sarah out to her car. The night was cool, the street lamps casting long shadows across the pavement. She paused, gripping his arm. "You don't think, if it is him, you don't think he'll hurt her, do you?" Caleb looked her in the eyes. "I believe she's still alive. And if she's alive, we can bring her home." Her lip quivered. but she nodded, clinging to his words as though they were a lifeline. Driving home, Caleb couldn't shake the unease. He'd been on cases before, but this one had sunk its claws deep into him. Every corner of town hummed with suspicion, every shadow seemed to hold secrets. And Bones hadn't stopped pacing since they left Finch's property. At a red light, Caleb glanced in the rearview mirror. The dog's eyes met his, steady and intense. It was as if Bones was trying to tell him something. We're close. Don't stop now. Caleb tightened his grip on the wheel. I'm not stopping, he murmured. Not until we find her. By midnight, the whispers had spread beyond Maple Street. Calls came in from neighboring towns, people offering tips, some useful, most not. A truck spotted here, a stranger there. Caleb sifted through each one, knowing most were dead ends but unable to ignore them. And yet one truth kept circling back. The bracelet. Buried on purpose. Left as a sign. The thought made his skin crawl. Someone wanted them to find it. Someone was playing with them. Bones stirred in the back seat, ears pricked, nose pressed to the glass. He whined softly, then growled low. Caleb followed his gaze toward the dark stretch of road leading out to the woods. The hairs on the back of Caleb's neck stood up. Whatever lay ahead, it wasn't over, not by a long shot. The following days bled together in a blur of dead ends. Each morning, the town woke to new rumors, new supposed sightings and fresh waves of panic. Each evening, Caleb found himself closer to Lily than he had been the night she vanished. Bones had tracked scents through alleyways across fields, even down into culverts, but none of them led to her. Every trail ended in confusion, like smoke dissolving in the wind. The weight of failure pressed down on Caleb's shoulders. He'd been in law enforcement long enough to know that time was the enemy. The longer a child was missing, the harder it became to bring them home safe. But this wasn't just any case, this was Lily. He saw her face on every telephone pole flyer, every TV screen flashing "missing" in bold red letters. And he saw her mother's eyes each time she asked if there was news. One evening, after another fruitless search, Caleb stopped by the Henderson home. Sarah opened the door before he even knocked, her face pale, her hair pulled back loosely as though she hadn't had the strength to care for herself. "Please," she whispered, "tell me you have something." Caleb lowered his eyes. "Not yet, but we're still working every lead. Bones is out there every day." Behind her, the house felt frozen in time. Lily's school backpack sat on a chair. Her sneakers, still muddy from the last day she wore them, rested by the door. The sight of those tiny shoes made Caleb's throat tighten. Sarah followed his gaze. "She was supposed to wear those for field day at school next week," she said softly. She was so excited. Bones moved forward, pressing his nose gently against Sarah's hand. For a moment she closed her eyes and let the dog's warmth steady her. "He's the only one who seems to know how I feel," she whispered. The town's faith began to crack. At the hardware store, Caleb overheard two men muttering that the police were moving too slow. At the post office, a woman shook her head, saying she wouldn't let her kids out of sight anymore. Suspicion festered. Some still pointed at Arthur Finch, but others whispered that it could be someone closer, someone they all knew. Trust, the glue of small-town life, was unraveling strand by strand. At the church on Sunday, Pastor Daniels tried to calm the congregation, but even his voice faltered. "We must hold on to hope," he said, his hands gripping the pulpit. "We must believe Lily will come home." Sarah sat in the front pew, her Bible clutched tight. Tears streamed down her cheeks as hymns rose weakly behind her. Bones lay at her feet, his head resting against her shoe. People watched him more than they listened to the sermon. Some said the dog's loyalty was a reminder that not all hope was lost. That night, Caleb spread maps across his kitchen table, red circles marking every place Bones had tracked, every tip that had come in. Coffee cups and half-eaten sandwiches cluttered the edges. He rubbed his temples, frustration gnawing at him. Bones paced the floor restlessly, nails clicking against the tile. He stopped at the door, whined, then returned to Caleb as if urging him to keep going. "I know, partner," Caleb muttered. "I feel it too. We're missing something." He leaned back, staring at the board filled with photographs and notes, the bracelet, the park, the tire marks, Finch's pale eyes. Each piece was real, but they didn't connect yet. Bones let out a low bark, insistent. Caleb followed his gaze to the window, where the night pressed in, thick and silent. "You want to go back out there, don't you?" Caleb asked. The dog wagged his tail once, sharply. The next morning, Caleb and Bones returned to Finch's property with a warrant in hand. The workshop was as cluttered as ever, tools scattered, old tires piled high. They searched every corner but found nothing. No clothing, no toys, no trace of Lily. Finch stood with his arms crossed, smirking faintly. "Told you I didn't do nothing." Bones barked sharply, lunging toward a locked cabinet. Caleb's heart leapt, but when they forced it open, all they found were old car parts and grease-stained rags. Another dead end. Frustration simmered in Caleb's chest. He'd let the town raise its hopes, and again he had nothing to show. Finch watched them leave with a smugness that made Caleb's blood boil. That evening, Sarah came to the station. She carried a framed photo of Lily in her Sunday dress, her smile wide and unguarded. She placed it gently on Caleb's desk. "I want you to keep this," she said. "I need you to remember who you're fighting for." Caleb swallowed hard, staring at the photo. "I won't forget, I promise." Bones rested his head on Caleb's lap, his brown eyes steady, loyal, unyielding. By the fifth day, exhaustion seeped into every corner of the search. Volunteers dwindled, the town's energy drained. But Bones refused to stop. He pulled at the leash during patrols, barked at shadows, paced the house at night. Caleb knew the dog sensed something still out there, something they hadn't uncovered yet. And then just before midnight, as Caleb reviewed the case notes again, Bones suddenly rose to his feet, ears pricked, muscles taut. He went to the door, scratching at it, whining with urgency. Caleb grabbed his flashlight and clipped on the leash. "All right, boy. Show me." As they stepped into the night, the town lay silent, asleep in uneasy dreams. But Bones's nose was already to the ground, pulling Caleb toward the dark edges of Maple Street, toward something hidden, something that might finally break the silence. The night was quiet, too quiet for Caleb's liking. Maple Street, once so familiar, now felt like it belonged to someone else. Porch lights glowed faintly, the hum of a distant TV carried through an open window, but otherwise the town seemed to hold its breath. Bones tugged hard against the leash, nose low to the ground, pulling Caleb away from the safety of the houses and into the fringe of the woods behind the park. His nails scraped against the asphalt, his breathing heavy with determination. "All right, boy," Caleb whispered, clicking on his flashlight. "Show me." The beam cut through the trees, revealing thick brush and tangled vines. Bones pushed through with urgency, his body tense and purposeful. Caleb followed, heart hammering, the night sounds of crickets and owls filling the silence between his own footsteps. After nearly half a mile, Bones stopped abruptly, barking sharply at a mound of overgrown weeds. Caleb swung the flashlight. At first, it looked like nothing more than a collapsed ditch. Then he saw it. A rusted metal grate half buried in dirt, the kind used to cover old storm drains. Bones pawed frantically, whining, his tail rigid. Caleb crouched, brushing away the soil. The grate lifted with a screech of metal, revealing a dark opening leading down into a tunnel. "Good boy," Caleb breathed, his stomach knotting. He shone the flashlight inside. The beam caught damp walls, graffiti scrawled in jagged lines, and the faint glimmer of something out of place. The tunnel smelled of mildew and rot. Caleb's boots echoed as he descended, Bones leading the way, his harness clinking softly in the silence. The air grew colder, heavier. The further they walked, the more the graffiti came into focus. Initials, names, dates carved into the walls. Some recent. some decades old. It sent a chill through Caleb. This wasn't just a forgotten drain. It had been used. Bones sniffed the ground intently, pulling Caleb deeper. His nose pressed to the dirt. He barked once, sharp and urgent, at a corner where the tunnel widened into a hollow space. Caleb's flashlight revealed scraps scattered across the floor. Food wrappers, a half-empty water bottle, rope fibers. And there, small and heartbreaking, sat a child's sneaker. Caleb bent slowly, lifting it with gloved hands. It was mud-stained, the sole worn from playground use. He recognized it instantly. He had seen it by the Hendersons' door the week Lily vanished. His throat tightened. "She was here," he whispered. Bones whined, circling the space as if searching for the girl herself. But the hollow was empty. Caleb radioed for backup, his voice steady but low. "I need units at the drainage tunnels off Maple. Possible. Evidence location. Repeat possible holding site." As he waited, he knelt, scanning the walls again. The graffiti wasn't just random scribbles. Among the initials and crude drawings were dates. Recent ones. Too recent. His beam stopped on one, 7/12/24, the day before Lily disappeared. The hair on his neck bristled. This place hadn't just been used, it was being used. He looked back at the sneaker, at the wrappers, at the rope fibers. Someone had kept her here. But they'd moved her. Bones barked again, nose pressing toward another passage branching off the main tunnel. Caleb aimed the light, revealing fresh scuff marks in the dirt. Not old, not weathered. Fresh. Backup arrived 20 minutes later, their flashlights bouncing off the tunnel walls. A crime scene unit snapped photos, collected the sneaker, the wrappers, the fibers. Caleb stood back, his arms crossed, his jaw clenched tight. Deputy Mills approached, his voice low. "She was here, Caleb, no doubt about it." "Yeah," Caleb muttered, "but now she's not." The weight of those words pressed into him. Every clue pointed to them being too late. Whoever had Lily was one step ahead. When Caleb finally emerged, from the tunnel the early dawn was breaking, painting the sky in pale streaks of orange. The town was just waking up, unaware of what lay beneath its feet. News traveled fast. By mid-morning, people gathered near the park, whispering about the discovery. Parents pulled their kids closer. Some cried openly. Others demanded action. Sarah arrived, her husband steadying her by the arm. When Caleb told her what they found, she swayed, clutching at the air. "Her shoe?" she whispered. "Oh God." She was really there? Caleb nodded solemnly. "Yes. But it means she's alive. She was being kept there recently. We're closer now." Sarah broke down, sobbing into her husband's chest. Bones pressed against her leg, tail low, his eyes soft, as though sharing her pain. She reached down, fingers trembling, and stroked his head. "Don't stop," she whispered. "Please don't stop." That night, Caleb sat at his desk, staring at the evidence bags lined neatly across the table. The sneaker, the wrappers, the rope fibers, each one a reminder of how close they'd come and how far Lily still was. Bones lay nearby, but not resting. His ears pricked at every sound outside, his chest rising and falling in restless rhythm. Caleb leaned back, rubbing his tired eyes. "We're in this deeper than anyone knows, partner. Whoever took her, they've done this before." He looked again at the graffiti, at the names and dates carved into the tunnel walls. The thought churned his stomach. This wasn't just one missing girl. It might be the latest chapter in something much darker. Bones lifted his head, meeting Caleb's gaze as if to say, "Then we keep going." Caleb nodded slowly. "Yeah, we keep going." The woods beyond Maple Street were darker than Caleb remembered. Even in daylight, the canopy of pines swallowed the sun, leaving long streaks of shadow across the forest floor. Bones moved with relentless purpose, nose to the ground, tail stiff, every muscle taut. "Easy, boy," Caleb murmured, though his own chest tightened with unease. "We'll follow it slow." They'd been in the tunnel most of the night, combing through evidence, but Bones wasn't ready to quit. As soon as Caleb clipped the leash back on, the dog pulled toward the far end of the drainage system, sniffing, whining, refusing to stop, until Caleb followed. Now they were deep in the woods, farther from town than Caleb liked. The flashlight beam caught glimpses of old beer cans, a rusted bicycle frame, and broken branches. Bones barked once, sharp, then lunged forward, dragging Caleb along the trail. After nearly an hour of weaving through thickets and muddy ground, the trees broke into a clearing. Caleb stopped short. Before them stood an old farmhouse. It leaned heavily to one side, boards warped and windows broken. The paint, what little remained, peeled in long strips, and ivy crawled up the sides like veins on rotting skin. The porch sagged dangerously. Its railing snapped in places. Bones growled low in his throat, ears flat, stance rigid. Caleb exhaled. "This is it, isn't it?" The farmhouse radiated a silence that felt alive. Caleb radioed for backup, his voice steady, but clipped. Possible location. Old farmhouse off County Road 9, past the drainage line, request immediate units. The dispatcher confirmed, but Caleb knew help would take time. They were miles out. Right now, it was just him and Bones. He scanned the perimeter. Grass grew waist-high. Broken glass glinted in patches of sunlight. A swing set leaned crooked in the backyard, one chain missing, the seat dangling like a broken limb. Caleb's pulse quickened. Places like this didn't just rot. They remembered. Bones tugged toward the cellar doors at the side of the house. They were wooden, swollen from years of weather, chained shut with a rusted lock. Bones scratched furiously, barking louder now, frantic. "Something's down there," Caleb muttered. His mouth went dry. The front door creaked open under Caleb's hand, revealing a stale rush of air. Inside, dust motes floated through shafts of light breaking in from shattered windows. The floor groaned beneath his boots. Furniture sat abandoned, covered in cobwebs. A rocking chair in the corner swayed slightly, as if moved by a draft or something more. The wallpaper peeled in curling strips, revealing water-stained plaster. Bones sniffed aggressively, moving from room to room, barking at corners, scratching the floorboards. Caleb's flashlight beam landed on more of the same graffiti he'd seen in the tunnel. Initials, crude drawings, even more dates. His skin prickled. This wasn't just a hiding place. It had history. He heard the crunch of tires outside. Backup had arrived. 2 patrol cars pulled into the clearing, headlights cutting through the gloom. Deputy Mills stepped out, hand on his holster, eyes wide at the sight of the farmhouse. "You think she's in there?" Mills asked. Caleb nodded. "Bones says so." The officers spread out, circling the house, weapons drawn. Caleb returned to the cellar doors. Bones pawed at them again, barking non-stop now, the sound echoing like an alarm through the trees. "Let's open it," Caleb ordered. Mills swung a crowbar against the lock. The chain snapped after a few blows, the cellar doors creaking open with a groan that seemed to shiver through the whole house. The smell hit them first. Damp earth, mildew, something sharper underneath. Caleb tightened his grip on the flashlight and descended the wooden steps, Bones bounding ahead. The beam swept across the cellar. The space was cramped, the walls lined with rotting shelves. In the corner sat a mattress, stained and filthy. Beside it, a cracked plastic bucket, empty food containers, and rope coiled like snakes. Bones barked furiously at the far wall, claws scraping at the boards. Caleb rushed over, shining the light. Behind the loose boards was a small hollow, barely, large enough for a child to crouch. Inside, clinging to the dirt floor, was Lily's other sneaker. Caleb's chest constricted. He lifted it gently, his voice low. "She's been here. God, she's been here." Bones whined, pawing at the hollow, tail lashing. But Lily wasn't here now. The team swept the rest of the farmhouse. Upstairs, they found piles of newspapers, stacks of old magazines, empty soda bottles. No Lily, no suspect. Yet the evidence was undeniable. Someone had kept her here, just like they had in the tunnel. Caleb stood in the living room, staring at the graffiti on the wall. A single phrase had been scrawled larger than the rest in jagged black paint. "She stays quiet," the words twisted in his gut. Mills came up beside him. "We're close. Too close for comfort. Whoever's doing this, they're moving her. Every time we get near." Caleb nodded grimly, "Which means he's watching us." The thought sent a chill down his spine. As the farmhouse was sealed off for forensics, Sarah arrived at the scene, her husband supporting her trembling frame. She saw the sneaker in Caleb's hand and gasped, covering her mouth. Tears streamed down her face. "She was here?" She choked out. Caleb crouched, meeting her eyes. "Yes. She was alive when she was here. We're getting closer." Her shoulders shook with sobs. But there was something else too. A flicker of hope, fragile but real. Bones nudged her hand, licking her fingers gently. She leaned down, whispering, "Bring her back, boy. Please, bring her back." As night fell over the woods, Caleb stood by the patrol cars, staring at the silhouette of the farmhouse against the fading light. Bones sat beside him, chest rising, and falling steadily, eyes still locked on the cellar door as if unwilling to look away. Caleb placed a hand on the dog's back. "We'll find her," he said, his voice low but resolute. And in the quiet that followed, with the farmhouse creaking behind them like an old wound reopened, Caleb knew one thing for certain. The chase wasn't over. If anything, it had only just begun. The old farmhouse loomed behind the patrol cars, its broken windows glowing faintly in the headlights. Caleb stood in the clearing, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the boarded-up structure. The shoe they'd found in the cellar weighed heavy in his mind. Lily had been there, alive. But she was gone again, moved like a pawn in a cruel game. Bones sat, at his side, ears perked, nose twitching in the cool night air. The dog hadn't stopped staring toward the woods beyond the farmhouse, his body humming with restless energy. Caleb reached down, ruffling his fur. "What is it, boy? You're not done yet, are you?" Bones barked once, sharp and insistent, then surged to his feet. He pulled at the leash, dragging Caleb toward a path that wound deeper into the trees. Caleb didn't hesitate. He trusted the dog more than any hunch, more than any tip. "Show me," he whispered. The trail twisted through underbrush, the ground damp with dew. Caleb's flashlight cut narrow beams into the darkness, catching glimpses of torn branches and trampled grass. Bones moved fast, determined, his growls vibrating low in his chest. 10 minutes in, they reached a clearing. An old shed stood there, half collapsed, its tin roof caved in and its door secured with a heavy padlock. Bones lunged at it, barking furiously, paws scraping against the wood. Caleb's chest tightened. He radioed quickly. "We've got another structure behind the farmhouse. Need backup now." Within minutes, deputies surrounded the shed, weapons drawn, flashlights bouncing across the clearing. Caleb gave the order. "Bust it open." The padlock snapped under a crowbar. The door groaned open, and the smell of damp earth and stale air poured out. Bones shot inside before anyone could stop him. His bark rang out, urgent, echoing against the metal walls. Caleb rushed in after him, his flashlight swept across the darkness. In the corner, chained to a wooden post, sat Lily Henderson. Her eyes were wide, terrified, but alive. "Lily." Caleb's voice cracked as he hurried forward. "You're safe now." She shrank back at first, confusion clouding her face. Then Bones pressed against her, tail wagging, licking her hands. Recognition flickered in her eyes. She clung to the dog, sobbing into his fur. Caleb's throat tightened as he worked the lock free. "You're okay, sweetheart. We're taking you home." Outside, the clearing erupted with noise. Radios crackling. Flashlights cutting the dark. Deputies shouting as Arthur Finch was dragged from the woods in handcuffs. His pale eyes darted wildly, his face twisted with anger. "You'll never prove anything," he spat. Caleb's voice was steel. "We don't need your words, Finch. We have her." Finch snarled, but it didn't matter anymore. The game was over. Sarah Henderson arrived minutes later, her husband guiding her trembling steps. When she saw Caleb carrying Lily out of the shed, Wrapped in a deputy's jacket, she collapsed to her knees with a cry that split the night. "Mommy!" Lily's voice was hoarse but unmistakable. Sarah gathered her daughter into her arms, clutching her so tightly it was as if she feared the world would steal her again. Tears streamed down her cheeks, soaking Lily's hair. "I've got you, baby, I've got you." The crowd of officers stood back, silent, watching the reunion with misted eyes. Even hardened deputies turned away to hide their emotions. Bones sat beside them, his head tilted, tail sweeping the ground. Lily reached down, still sobbing, and hugged him tight. "Good boy," she whispered. "You saved me." For Caleb, that moment erased every sleepless night, every dead end, every doubt. They had brought her home. In the days that followed, Maple Street slowly began to breathe again. Porch lights no longer flickered in fear but shone like beacons of relief. Flyers came down, replaced by banners of thanks strung across the diner and church hall. Arthur Finch sat in custody, facing charges that would keep him behind bars for the rest of his life. The evidence from the tunnel, the farmhouse, and the shed built a case so strong there would be no escape this time. At the Henderson home, neighbors stopped by with casseroles, flowers, and prayers. Lily clung to her mother, still shaken but safe, always reaching for Bones when the nightmares came. The dog stayed close, never leaving her side. Caleb visited one afternoon, leaning against the porch railing while Sarah rocked Lily gently in her lap. She looked up, tears in her eyes, but a smile breaking through. "I don't have words, Officer Turner, you and Bones. You gave me my daughter back." Caleb shook his head. "Bones deserves the credit. He never gave up." Bones wagged his tail, pressing his head into Lily's lap as if to agree. Weeks later, the town gathered at the church to honor Bones. The pastor spoke of loyalty, of bravery, of the kind of bond that saves lives. Children ran up afterward to pat the German shepherd, their laughter echoing through the hall. For Caleb, it was more than recognition. It was proof that even in the darkest cases, hope could survive. And sometimes, hope had 4 paws and a steady bark. And so the story of Lily Henderson ended not with silence but with gratitude. A little girl returned home, a town found its faith again, and one canine dog proved that heroes don't always wear uniforms. Sometimes they wear fur.